So I've just spotlighted myself. I've jumped the gun here. Welcome back, everyone. How wonderful that we're able to get together again this week. It seems like an age since I last saw you all. And as you might have figured out from the news, we've our city, Brisbane, has been going through quite extreme floods. And many people have, lost everything and come out just with their lives, their parents and their pets. So, yeah, it's been quite intense and the whole city's ground to a standstill at the moment while everyone's trying to clean up the mess and public transport's finished and schools are closed and all sorts of things. But nevertheless, we're on top of a hill, so I'm able to be here in our wonderful Lungri Tumpa Centre library and meet with you all again, because this is the nature of our life. It's the nature of samsara, isn't it? That we have so little control over our emotions, over the weather, over politics, over other people. And we really got to pick our battles, don't we? So the Healing Anxiety and Depression class is about that. And just to kind of put it all back into perspective again, the anxiety and depression aren't the problem. They're the result of the problem. The anxiety and the depression are the symptom that there's something wrong, but they're not the thing that's wrong in itself. And so we've got to dive a little bit deeper to see, well, what is it that's wrong that's causing us this continuous anxiety or continuous depression? So just to kind of recap before we set our motivation for today, to set the scene, what we've covered so far, remember the whole point of even delving into the causes of anxiety and depression is because it's worth it. And it's worth it because anxiety and depression aren't the fundamental nature of our mind. Actually, our nature, the fundamental nature of our mind is pure and clear. All of the qualities, our qualities as human beings, our kindness, our wisdom, our compassion, they are at the core of our being, not the disturbing emotions. So even though this is the case, how come we have disturbing emotions? It's like the weather systems. We've got turmoil, we've got clouds, we've got pollution, and that disturbs our peace of mind. And so Lama Zopa Rinpoche often refers to our disturbing emotions and our afflicted states of mind as the inner terrorists, and far worse than the external terrorists, because the external terrorists, the most they can do is harm our body. But we have our mind, we have our internal world. We have a choice how we respond, how we think, how we feel. As human beings, we have a choice whether we help others, whether we collapse in a heap. And we have a choice to actually overcome these inner terrorists. So how do we do that? Well, we have to be able to recognize them. It's not through lack of trying, is it? But some of these inner terrorists are obvious and others are very well disguised. So we've gone through ignorance. Well, our innate ignorance that we have, it's not just ordinary not knowing. It's not just being confused about stuff, but it's being blind to our own potential, being disconnected from that natural purity that we have, being disconnected from our strength, from our internal, from our qualities, from our potential, and also then being unaware how we function in the world, how we function as human beings. The biggest thing that we have problems with, as we all know from the evidence, is putting cause and effect together. So putting external cause and effect together is really hard. You know, we know smoking's going to kill us, or eating a bad diet's going to, you know, having a sedentary lifestyle, all of these things. I know those things, and yet I still do them, because the result comes later on, doesn't it? So we don't quite put the cause and result together. So then we experience the consequences. And that's the real type of ignorance that we're talking about, the suffering consequences that come from that kind of ignorance. Confusion, denial, whatever we want to call it. There's many layers. We also looked at pride, or a distorted idea of ourselves, a distorted identity, whether it's distorted where we inflate our own sense of importance by comparing ourselves to others, and then we have a short-term kind of feeling okay, but this continuously needs maintenance. Or whether we are completely deflated, we go to the other extreme and we think we'll never be able to do it, or the strongest part of us is our trauma and our unhappiness, so we think that's us and it imprisons us. And then last week we looked at probably one of the most tricky of the inner terrorists, Angelina, attachment. So attachment, when the mind of attachment first arises, it feels good. It feels nice. We're full of anticipation. We're looking forward to things. Then the things come, then they reveal their true nature. Then we're disappointed and possibly it flips over to anger. And we don't see that as a process of all being the mind of attachment. We see it as somehow an aberration. Oh, something must have gone wrong. I know, I'll just get more of the thing and it'll all be better. And while we can get more of the thing, we think we're on track. So really, attachment only reveals its face to us when we can't get more of the thing. And then we're faced with ourselves. And, you know, many of us around the world experienced this with lockdown, didn't we? What happened when we couldn't entertain ourselves anymore, when we got stir crazy, we couldn't go out? Then it really revealed the true nature of attachment. So we've been going through the various worksheets, and hopefully you've been having discussions. I hear that Venerable has a little side hustle with the discussion group and kind of just talking about the homework, and I'm so happy to hear that this is happening, because the main thing is just getting the conversation started. Not necessarily finding solutions or coming up with the answer, but just getting familiar with this new paradigm. It's like having a complete paradigm shift. So what we're going to have a look at today now is continuing on how to, in particular, listen to the wisdom in your anxiety. So remember, anxiety isn't the problem. Anxiety has led us to this course, for starters. It's, you know, it's become so much, we've got to do something about it. But anxiety isn't the problem in itself. It's evidence of the problem. It's evidence something's wrong. So how do we tune into that wisdom? How do we find the wisdom buried in this experience? Anxiety is the result. So what's causing it? What's causing our suffering, our angst? So we're going to have a little look at the difference between, say, anxiety and just outright fear, and also the difference between anxiety and anticipation. Then we're going to dive deeper into the really common misconceptions that we have about the causes of our suffering, and in particular, our anxiousness and worry, all the way to that sense of gnawing dread that we might have in the pit of our stomach. So what perpetuates our anxiety are these common misconceptions. So this comes from a teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And then we're going to have a look at really simple steps to break the habit of worry. So I think I am totally qualified to talk about this, because I've got a huge habit of worry. I've worried my whole life, even as a child. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, every time I've managed to, you know, have a meeting with Rinpoche, might be every few years. You know, and I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe when I was a small child, and right from the very beginning. the first thing Rinpoche would say to me, he'd lean over and he'd say, Miffi, don't worry. So it's been endemic my whole life, this practice of worry. So how do we break it? How do we break that habit of worry? Anyway, I hope we're going to get to all of this. Let's just take a moment to set our motivation, everybody. So let's start where we are with all of our suffering, our problems, our anxiety, and just kind of recognize that they're there. There is one tiny silver lining already, isn't there, that we're here together at this class. That already is a huge step, that we've had the opportunity to get together like this. Is so fortunate, really lucky, but also that you've had the courage to do something, to take another step. So that's our starting point, as you know, to start where we are. And then we can kind of widen our internal vision by recognizing, oh yeah, I'm not alone. Everybody experiences this. Everybody experiences fear, anxiety, dread, restlessness, the whole spectrum. And nobody likes it. So in a way, even though we may not know each other personally, you are my people. We have this in common already, something very fundamental. Everybody feels shy, intimidated, scared, nervous, even the most powerful people. Whether they show it or not, that's another thing, but everybody feels like that. And here we are with this common experience, but in an uncommon situation, because we have this unique opportunity to do something about it. And we can do something about it. What we can do is based in a really clear understanding of reality and our own nature. So we can adjust our motivation to think that everything that happens to us, everything that we look at, can go not just on this track of worry, but can propel us to freedom, to becoming free of worry and anxiety. And that way, then we can help everyone around us, from our pets, children, friends, aging parents, workmates. Immediately, we can have a calming effect on the world. And we can set our motivation that actually our experience of anxiety can lead us to liberation. It can lead us, in fact, all the way to full awakening, to Buddhahood. So we can dare to set that as our motivation. May everything that happens to us, may we be able to grasp it, to seize the day, and really find the essence of the situation, to be able to free ourselves and all others from suffering and bring them to happiness. So with this really big-hearted motivation, feel how this motivation fills you with courage. Recognize how it's based in reality, in the science of the mind, to give us confidence. And motivated by our care for others, recognizing that they're just like us. So with this motivation, let's delve in. And I might have mentioned in some of the previous classes, you know, when someone asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he was out here in Australia giving some public talks and teachings, and they asked about what's the Buddhist cure or answer to anxiety and depression? And His Holiness gave such a pragmatic answer. And he said, basically, because there are many causes, it's not just one cause. Because there are many causes, we have to come at it from many angles. So this is quite different. For instance, when we looked at last week, attachment, that is it's a universal experience, and it has a universal cure. It's in that way, it's quite straightforward. Whereas anxiety might have all different causes. So we ourselves have to investigate what they are and apply all different remedies. And you may then, as we go through, find that you have many of them, so it's compounded. So His Holiness's answer was pragmatic because it started with the easiest first. The most basic, most simple thing. This is where we start. So let's have a look. Causes of depression and anxiety. So number one, look at the organic causes. Look at if we have changes in brain chemistry, which can come about through things like PMT, postnatal depression. We might have just something as simple as sleep apnea. So we're not getting enough oxygen, so we're tired. We might have an acquired brain injury. My father, for many years, he was a trumpeter in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. And after about 18 years of being in the orchestra, he started experiencing stage fright. And he's like thinking, this huge wave of anxiety would come over him. How can this be possible? I've been performing, for 18 years. How can I be getting stage fright now? And so for a couple of years, he delved deeply into this, counseling, everything. You know what? It turned out that he developed high blood pressure. So nevertheless, all of this looking within and counseling, it didn't go to waste. But actually what was happening was physiological high blood pressure, so that he just had adrenaline surging through his body and it would affect him. So it's worth actually finding this out first. Do yourself a favor and go for the easy things first. Look also at our diet. How much sugar are we consuming? Because if you drink 6 cans of Coke a day, you're going to have a sugar rush, and then you're going to have a sugar crash. So in the rush, it's going to be fun. Then, like me, if I have too much coffee, I get a bit lockjaw. Then it's no fun anymore. Then also all the worry and the stuff, it starts gripping you. Then when you have the crash, it's so easy to think, oh, depression, angst, we're all doomed. And you know what? It's just brought on by a sugar rush. So if we don't want to put ourselves through this roller coaster and make things even more difficult, if we actually do have something really deep going on and we exacerbate it by poor diet and by too much sugar, what hope do we have? Even if we do start looking within, we're just stacking the odds against ourselves. So it's really worth looking just at the organic, the brain chemistry, the diet, the environment, your health, the physical causes, and get that sorted straight away. Even, for really serious things like postnatal depression, which is it's a hormonal thing as much as anything else, to name it, to be able to identify it, to take away the guilt and the shame. Then it's much easier to actually get some help. And then if there is something deeply fundamentally wrong underneath, you're going to have the strength to look at it. So first things first. And because many times, in a way, we can belittle the strength of this physical cause And it can end up, being kind of gaslighting people, minimizing your own experience. So for many reasons, start looking here. Then the next cause is that our anxiety might be a response to extreme events, to a trauma, a past trauma, to growing up in a violent family, for instance, to having undergone traumatic events like a loss, a death, a crash, going to war, being a first responder, natural disasters. So, for instance, now at the moment in Brisbane, we have these massive floods. There's a whole lot of people have been triggered from the floods last time as the waters are rising. So you might undergo an earthquake, and in your mind you think, oh, the tanks are coming. The war is coming. So a response to past events. And I think now PTS, it's not called PTSD anymore. It's not post-traumatic stress disorder. At least in Australia, it's being called post-traumatic stress. That's it. It's not a disorder. It's actually a legitimate response because we are carrying past trauma. So to actually recognize if that's true and call it for what it is. Underneath that are destructive habits, the momentum of our destructive habits and learned behavior. So for instance, how we felt as a child, if we were neglected as a child, then we carry that as an adult. And so you arrange to meet someone for coffee and they're late, and we don't just think, oh, gee, maybe they forgot, oh, I hope nothing happened, maybe there's traffic. What happens is our whole past learned behavior arises, and we're overwhelmed by feelings of neglect, betrayal, rejection. So it's this huge emotional response, but it's driven by habit, by it being our default, our default response. So again, not to blame, but to just recognize that this is what's happening. And under all of it, what drives it? The afflictive emotions, our distorted states of mind and heart, the ones that are out of step with reality. So with attachment, for instance, it's out of step with reality because of the over-exaggeration, because of the projection of qualities that aren't there in the object. So the main cause of anxiety deep within is attachment, but it's very hard for us to get at it. In fact, we don't even know we have an attachment because we can't recognize it so clearly. But if we have anxiety, we have attachment. So that's the universal one. It's always driven by the attachment. So the good thing about looking at these four things, the organic physiological cause, the response to events that have happened to us, the momentum of habit, and then driven by our afflictive emotions, all of this we can do something about to a degree. And even if, as is our want these days, where we say, oh, well, it's our brain chemistry, our brain's just wired that way, even then we don't have to be fatalistic, because brain chemistry, it's a two-way street. We have brain plasticity, neuroplasticity, which means even if it's hardwired in from trauma, from our physiology, even then, by changing our mind, we can rewire our brain. This is possible, and it's happened again and again. We can actually overcome those very deep-seated traumas, and we can rewire our brain. So yes, it does take effort. In fact, the effort has to be of equal proportion to the trauma. but it is possible. It's fundamentally possible, all the way to a neurological point of view. So that's really, really good news for us, that we can do something about it. We never have to feel that it's, that our brain chemistry is our destiny. No. There's room to move. So, in particular with anxiety and the causes of anxiety, let's have a look at, well, what's the difference between anxiety and fear? So how we experience anxiety and fear, let's have a look. Let's see, who's got their hand up? Abelardo, what do you reckon?
Oh, no, I wanted to make a comment about the previous point that
yes,
the relationship between attachment and anxiety. In the homework that we did, I recognized many of my attachments, but the questions were all geared towards outside things or people, relationships. But then the meditation on sharing one's body elements put me in touch with my deeper source of anxiety, which is the attachment to my life, to my body, fear of death and all of that, and sickness. Yeah, it's a bunch of fears and anxiety, I guess.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is good. It's not pleasant, but it's good that this is happening, because you're getting to the real crux of the matter there. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today, of how to use that fear of losing our life, how we can use that to have a good life. Because, so many times we don't actually recognize the importance and the beauty of our life until it's threatened. Just like we don't recognize how wonderful it is to have our health until we lose it.
Right.
So there's kind of, we have this kind of blindness. So our anxiety shows us this. So we can use our anxiety if we're not overwhelmed by the momentum of it. So Abelardo, it sounds like you're getting very close to it. So stick in there and let's make it to the end of the class. But really, thank you very much for bringing that up. That's the crux of the matter.
Yeah, one last thing I want to say. It's been some time now that I've been, struggling to resolve the issue of if I really accept rebirth, because I've been in Buddhism for a long time, but I've really come to recognize that I have a crisis of faith in that regard. So anyway, I just want you to.
Aha. So, as an aside, a crisis of faith is good. And remember, in Buddhism, there's no room for belief. Buddhism is not based on belief. It's not based on faith as a feeling. Buddhism is based on reason.
Right.
So that's where you have to start. And then the feeling comes after that. Don't try and get the feeling first. It's got to come from reasoning. And the reasoning is kind of foreign to us. We have to become familiar with it. And a lot of stuff is counterintuitive. And we know how difficult just in ordinary life things are counterintuitive. We're really tired, so we just lay around and rest all the time. And people say, no, do more exercise. And I go, how's that going to make me have any more energy? It's counterintuitive. So a lot of this, especially when we're looking at the nature of our mind and then what happens after we die, it's counterintuitive. So we can't get at it feeling first. We have to come at it with logic, with reasoning, with mind science. That's what it's based on.
I agree. And the last thing is that I've taken bodhisattva vows, a long time ago, but then life in samsara at this stage of my life has become so tough, so painful, so much suffering that I doubt whether I'm willing to really return. For the sake of others.
Darling, you're not going to have any choice whether you return or not. It's just whether you return on your own terms.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Okay.
Thank you, Abelardo. Very funny. That's great. So this is a very good context for us all. So let's have a look. So the difference between anxiety and fear, okay? And, you know, in this context, the big questions. So fear, it's an unpleasant experience. We don't like being fearful, but it can be very accurate. So it can accurately reflect a situation. And we need fear to keep ourselves safe. So, you know, if we weren't scared of being hit by a car, we wouldn't pay any attention to crossing the road. You know, if we weren't scared of falling down the stairs, we wouldn't hold on to the railing. We wouldn't pay attention. So we need fear. We need a degree of fear. And I know as a young, stupid teenager and in my 20s, many of my friends were taking lots of drugs and a couple of them died. And so I thought that I was just a scaredy cat and a loser because I wasn't taking any drugs, because I was too scared to lose my life. Now, that was very lucky. That means I'm still here now and they aren't. So fear is good, not pleasant, but important. In fact, pain is good too, because our pain system tells us when we've gone too far. And, you know, we've seen those stories of kids that are born that have, you know, a nerve condition where they don't feel pain, and the nightmare that their parents have to try and keep them safe because they have no feedback to tell them this is a dangerous activity. So how do, you know, if the kid jumps off the roof and breaks their ankle and they don't notice, how are you going to keep them safe? So we actually need fear. It's there biologically hardwired in to keep us alive. Really important. So then anxiety. This is where the fear is there and we can't see what it's related to. So it seems out of proportion. We may have a general malaise, like just wake up every morning with a feeling of dread in our stomach. So this could be that we have our gut biome is out of whack, but it could also be that where there is something gnawing at the back of our mind, like you were saying, Abelardo, of like, what if I lose my life? What does that mean? What's going to happen? What have I done with my life? So we're worried. And actually, this is good worry. It's not pleasant, but it's important. Because if we don't have that, if we're just going through life willy-nilly, we'll just go through life. We'll do everything, whatever in life, the common things, and then die. And so what? Who cares? Not even you, you're dead. So this feeling of dread is there because the dread recognizes there is importance here. So in a way, we can think the amount of dread that we have, it can be indicating the amount of attachment that we have, but it can also indicate the amount of importance that there is to our life that we haven't given its due. So because anxiety feels bad, we think it's negative. We think it is bad. And this is a big mistake. It can really help direct our mind to find some fundamental truths about our life. So there's some things that happen with anxiety that means that it's not our friend. We can't use it. It overwhelms us. It cripples us. So one of them is fighting it. Fighting anxiety, fighting that dread, fighting worry just makes it stronger. How ironic is that? Because what happens when we fight something and we go, no, 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 I don't want it, we're engaging with it. We're giving it our full attention. What happens when we give something our full attention? It encompasses us. So whether we embrace anxiety or whether we fight it, either way, we're engaging and it becomes stronger. So something to keep in mind, that just trying to force it down, it's not going to work. And just trying to distract ourselves is not a long-term solution. The other thing that happens when we engage with anxiety by fighting it, by going, no, 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 don't want it, don't want it, don't want it, it actually becomes fueled by this force of habit, and we perpetuate it because we are engaging with it all the time. So then anxiety and worry becomes our modus operandi. It comes from attachment, and attachment comes from grasping at this fictional identity, grasping at this life that we have as if it was a real, ultimate thing, instead of just like a rented hotel room that we enter and leave. And the result of anxiety is that we feel alone and isolated. We feel constantly threatened, and we identify with our powerlessness. We feel powerless. So the root cause of anxiety, if we want to get rid of anxiety, we've got to look at the root cause. And the root cause is that innate ignorance that we have, that we don't understand our nature or the potential of our life. And because we haven't got a grip on that, we have anxiety and dread, because our Buddha nature, our inner wisdom, knows we're missing something here. And in between that is just attachment, is the mind of attachment that runs away with us and is often focused outwards or focused just on the material things, without being able to grasp the meaning. And so, as Venerable Robina often says, what happens? We panic. And what happens when we panic? We lose all of our wisdom. So the other thing to do with anxiety that I wanted to share with you that I haven't put on that slide is how we have anxiety and we have anticipation. And if you've ever been in the performing industries, a musician, maybe even if you're a painter, possibly even if you're a cook, there is an anxiety about has something turned out well, and there's anticipation about how it's going to be received. Before you go on stage, there is anxiety and there's anticipation. And some people are completely frozen by the anxiety. It's debilitating. And in our mind, we distinguish between the two. One's pleasant, one's unpleasant. Anticipation's pleasant, anxiety's not. But here's the thing. Neurologically, there's no difference. Neurologically, what's happening in our brain, all the little things shooting this way and that way, no difference between anticipation and anxiety. So my dear friend Pearly Black, who's an amazing singer, she had anxiety, many times, stage fright before going on stage. And she asked John Rogers, this great composer, how come you don't get nervous before going on stage? And he just said, I just think of it as anticipation. And it changes everything. You say to yourself, I'm not anxious, I'm excited. Neurologically, they are the same. So one is that you're focusing on everything bad, you're going, no, 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 don't want it, don't want it. And the other is you're focusing on the positive and you're embracing it. You're going, let's go with it. So you, instead of the adrenaline overwhelming you and you're trying to fight adrenaline, which is impossible, you use the adrenaline. You use that tunnel vision to focus you on the art. So that's what I found with leading classes. When I first started leading classes, especially this course, and I was leading it on Tuesdays. I called it my Torture Tuesdays. And I would dread leading this class. I'd be crying with dread. But the first thing that I did was going, well, you know, Miffi, it's not about you. It doesn't matter if you're miserable. It's about the people here at the class that, you know, they need something. They're here because they need something. So it doesn't matter about me. I'm just here to, you know, to give this. So I'll live through it. So I gave up on trying to get rid of it. I gave up on trying to get rid of the anxiety. I just thought, okay, it is what it is. I just got to live with it. And that in itself relaxed me. Then I recognized that actually the anxiety, the adrenaline was really important because it focused my mind. Otherwise, I just would have been sitting there going, oh, yeah, well, you know, whatever. You know, that's no good. You've got to be able to focus. And physiologically, our body is built to be able to focus. That's what tunnel vision and adrenaline are for. So they're very important. And the key is to stop trying to fight it, but to use the momentum. And how do we do that? It's by thinking of others. That's the real freedom. Anyway, I'm really happy to say after a while, so I've been leading this course for maybe 15, 17 years now. So after a while, I stopped calling them my Torture Tuesdays, and I was kind of just neutral. So I could actually eat something on a Tuesday. I didn't feel sick to my stomach. And then it started changing, and I started actually looking forward to it. and now leading a class, it is the highlight, not just of my day, it's the whole purpose of my life. It's the highlight of my life. It's the reason why I push through everything else. Like, it is the thing. So I still do get nervous and I get a bit of adrenaline and everything, but I've learned not to fear it. It's my friend. What about the fear that I disappoint you all? Yeah, so even then, you know, if people drop out and stuff like that, I wonder, maybe you haven't got your money's worth, maybe I've offended someone. So again, wondering those things, if it's all about me, then I don't actually want to know the answers. I just want everyone to like me. But actually, it's good to wonder, have I offended anyone, or are people dropping out because I'm being too heavy? These are good questions to pose because it helps me try and find a balance, and I probably haven't found the balance. But I do actually want to know. I want to know the answer. I'm not scared. Why? Because it's not about me. So this one, it's a real shortcut, this one. If we want the easy way, that's the easy way. Thanks, Oren. All right, so now let's have a look at what drives it underneath all of this. What drives our anxiety? The deep fundamental drivers. And this comes from the Four Noble Truths. And it's when we have misconceptions about the nature of things, all of our emotional suffering and turmoil comes from these misconceptions. And while we function under these misconceptions, all the day-to-day difficulties that we have, they are compounded. They become very deep-seated. They become neurologically hardwired. We experience pain and confusion. So if we can start working on these 4 misconceptions, this will actually undo the very root causes of anxiety and depression. So the first misconception that we have, we think that things and people and relationships don't change. That's our assumption, that they're not going to change. You know, we say, oh, why can't things just be like they were before? When, you know, we're shocked when someone gets ill. When somebody dies, it's always a shock, isn't it? We never go, well, of course. somebody's died. I remember when David Bowie died, everyone's like, how could David Bowie die? It's totally irrational. And yet, how many of us said it? So this is because underneath we grasp at permanence and we have this expectation that things won't change. And yet by nature they will. And it's just the reality impinging, and it's a shock to us. And that's what causes the suffering. So the nature of any physical thing, any object that we have, in the end is to break. It's to wear out. Someone gives you a bunch of flowers. We know this, don't we? We talked about this last week. We know they're not going to be perfect forever. They're going to wilt and rot and die. But with flowers, we can find it acceptable because it's a very short time scale. But with other things, it's a shock to us. And we don't want the relationships to end. But actually, every single relationship we have will end, including our life. So that's just the fact of it. And fighting against that will make it worse. So let's do it gracefully, graciously. The good thing about this is that depression and anxiety also will change. They cannot last forever. That's just such a relief. The second one, we have an expectation that things will bring us lasting happiness. So we yearn for fulfillment, for happiness, for peace of mind, for meaning, for all of these things. We yearn for that, for safety, for joy. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't ever have to stop yearning for that. In fact, we can't stop. But we've got to look for it where it can be found. And where we're looking for lasting happiness is in things that do not last. We look for lasting happiness in relationships. Relationships don't last. And even if the relationship does last, we human beings don't last. We look for our lasting happiness in changeable phenomena, like a job. You know, we think, oh, it's a perfect job. It might be perfect for 1 second, but then it changes. We get a new boss, we get new workmates, or we have to, you know, move interstate, or something changes. Some of the circumstances change and now it's no longer perfect. So then we look for another new perfect job. So that's like, it's chasing illusions. We can still look for lasting happiness, but we've got to look for where it can be found. So I found this very heartening because it means you don't have to give up your passion ever. You can keep your passion and your lust for life, but you just got to look in the right place. And then you can find something deeply satisfying in amongst all the turmoil and the change. But we're not going to find it out there, and we're not going to find it in the stuff, and we're not even going to find the answers in a really good relationship. We can only find it within. So our anxiety might manifest here, low-level anxiety, which is that thought, is that all there is? Is that it? Everybody else seems, you know, happy with their lot, but I'm not. Surely that's not it. So that's a low level anxiety there. And as we get older, it will turn into that dread in the pit of your stomach. And that dread comes because we've been looking for happiness outside of us. The dread indicates to us we're looking in the wrong place. This is wrong. So in a way, our dread is our friend. Okay, a couple of the other ones. So the first two, impermanence, and that, you know, external things in the nature of change are in the nature of misery, not of lasting happiness. These next two are to do with emptiness and selflessness. So in colloquial terms, we expect things and people to be pure or perfect. And we recognize this, it happens in our speech patterns where we go, but it should work. The computer should work. You know, people should know better. So anytime we say that word should, we know we're grasping at, we're expecting things to be pure and perfect that aren't. So human beings are fallible. Unless we're enlightened, we're fallible. Relationships are unstable. Objects change. Things have inherent complications. So anything that's pleasant also comes with problems. So many times Venerable Robina has talked about this and how she's, you know, said we want the relationship, but we don't want the worry that goes along with it. We want to have kids, but then along with having kids comes worry about the kids. And somehow we think that's an aberration. We think, oh, maybe I could have a kid and not worry. No one told me about the worry that comes along with it. But those things, they go together, because all of those things are not naturally pure. They change. They're, contaminated by delusions and disturbing emotions and karma. So the things that we are very involved in and obsessed with, we've got to look, are they really worth it? Are the things that we're yearning for really worth it? Do our external obsessions really matter, or do they point to a deeper truth? So in amongst the worry that comes in a relationship where we worry if it's going to change or if something's going to happen to them, that worry and anxiety, it destroys the relationship. And we're kind of worrying if it's going to end, but actually it is going to end. So that worry isn't about if it's going to end or not. It's showing us, what do we have to do in the meantime? What's important here? But what do? We just try and get rid of the worry. We go, la, 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 not listening. It'll be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. But we can be okay. The world is a terrifying, tumultuous place. We can't do anything about that. But we ourselves, we can do something about what's happening in our mind, and we can do something about how we respond and how we look after others. That is something that we can do something about. The last one, okay, we think that things have a real or findable essence. And this is where our materialistic culture comes in, where we think, for instance, we completely identify with our body. We think we are our body. And so that if our body ends, or if we kill our body, it's all over, we're finished. Well, actually, we're just going to wake up again somewhere else as someone else. Just like every morning we wake up now, we're just going to wake up somewhere else. And just like every morning we can't tell what mood we're going to wake up in, next life we're not going to be able to tell what life we wake up in. But we think, oh, this is me. And we don't even know that that's what's happening until something happens to our body. So when you start aging, you start really questioning this. Oh, am I aging? And you go, oh, no, it's just my body that's aging. But it can really shake us to the core. And if something happens, like if you have an injury, or if you have breast cancer and you have to have your breast removed, really deep questions come in of like, am I still a woman? I don't feel like a woman. So where does this identity come from? So we're kind of grasping at these external things as being the real me. We grasp at not just our body, but our gender, our career, our age, our status as being the real me. And when they change, which they inevitably will, then we have a crisis. But actually, if we look at ourselves, we look at how so little of ourselves is ourselves, that we are actually a product of our era. Like I think of myself, if I was born with my personality 100 years ago, I would have turned out a totally different person just because of the circumstances. You know, I probably would have been locked up somewhere, actually. Can't have an uppity woman. You know, or if you don't get to have an education, then you don't get to bring all of the potential that you have to bring it out. So much of who we are is a product of our environment, of our support from others, of our education, of whether we have political freedom or religious freedom. That's what determines us. And yet we think that's me. The classic one is youth. You know, when you're young, you think that you're, you know, naturally great and you think it's you. Then as you get older and things start breaking and you lose your energy and all of that kind of thing, then you start going, oh God, that wasn't me at all. That was just youth and it's gone. So the really good thing about this one is that how we feel is not who we are. What we identify our disturbing emotions, they're also not us. Our problems are also not us, just like all of these other things are not us. We're not them. So these 4 misconceptions, they're very deep, they're deeply ingrained. And where do we start? We've just got to start by recognizing them at play. So let's take, where does this lead us to? Let's take an example of how stress and anxiety can be a good thing. So I'm going to say stress, it's not pleasant. Anxiety is not pleasant, but it's essential. So what I have a picture here of the astronauts, you know, so the astronauts, here they are, they just float around, don't they? When they get out of bed, they don't have to drag themselves out of bed. They just float out of bed. How amazing. You know, how would I'd love to be able to do that. So we can kind of think, oh, fantastic, you know, just get rid of all the stresses. I'd like to be stress-free. But actually, we need stress to grow and develop. Because have you noticed when the astronauts come back to Earth, and it was just like, was it like a year ago, they had that footage of the astronauts coming back to Earth and they had to carry them. Did you see? They were in the chairs. So they were carried, it was quite regal how they were carrying them when they arrived on the Earth, planet Earth. Why did they have to carry them? They had no muscle mass. They couldn't use their muscles. They could not stand up. Not only that, if they had stood up, their bones would have broken because they'd lost bone density. Why does that happen? No stress. So when we walk around on planet Earth, all the time we're fighting against gravity, and that fight against gravity makes us strong. It means that we have bone density. It means that we have muscle strength. If we didn't have it, we'd just collapse as jelly, just like those astronauts. And it takes them ages to come back, to get all their strength back again. And they're just in space for just a few months. So here we are, we're trying to shield ourselves from stress, from problems. We're trying to shield our kids from stress and problems, and we're doing them a great disservice. Actually, shielding ourselves and others from problems as if they're not there means we never get to practice. And it means that we grow them up disabled. So I have a friend, for instance, who managed to get up until her early 30s without anyone close to her dying. And I'm sure, you know, she might have had a goldfish or something and that, you know, just went off to live in some other pond or whatever. So no deep loss. And then in her early 30s, her dog, who she lived with for ages, her dog got sick and then died. And she was beyond devastated. In fact, her whole life came crumbling down. So why did this happen? Because it was the very first time that she'd experienced loss, and she was in her mid-30s. No practice, no experience. So we might think that we're saving ourselves from catastrophe and things, but actually, how do we get resilience? How do we actually grow strong? It's through problems. We need problems. So what's happening here is we have cognitive fusion, where we think, oh, a problem, it feels bad, therefore it is bad. We think a problem is by nature bad. This is not true. That's cognitive fusion. Something feels unpleasant, therefore it is bad. That's a mistake. Stress feels unpleasant, so then we think it's bad. That's a mistake. Problems, difficulties, heartache, loss, they feel bad, we think they are bad. It's a big mistake. In fact, if we didn't have an experience of loss, we wouldn't have compassion. We wouldn't have empathy for others. So we need these things. But as human beings, we need them in intermittent stages, just like when you're doing training at the gym. It can't be that you lift weights for 24 hours straight. You will break something. You need to lift weights and then have a rest, and then lift weights and then have a rest. So we need to be able to have a problem and practice and deal with it, and then have a safe space to regroup, to emotionally rest, to become ready again, and have our strength to then meet the next problem. So we do need help, care, kindness. We need a refuge, as well as we need problems. So our feelings, they're valid, but they're not facts. Our feelings go, no, 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 problem, don't want it. That's a legit feeling, but it's not a fact. It's not true. And resilience, it's a big catchword, isn't it? It's the ability to voluntarily bear suffering by keeping our own mind calm. So I've got something to read to you from Venerable Gyatso, The Perfect Mirror. Instead of being obstacles to happiness, the things that go wrong in life, which we usually react to with sadness, anxiety, or anger, can become sources of happiness. The key to this magical transformation is knowing that just as rain is a curse for picnickers, but a blessing for farmers, it's our self-oriented outlook that determines whether something is a problem or not. If we always react to difficulties with self-centered aversion and continue to blame the external world for our troubles, things will always appear to be against us, and we'll never be free from sadness, anxiety, or anger. To not be disturbed by problems, we must first reject the attitude of not wanting things to go wrong. We have to abandon our aversion to suffering by recognizing that things are always going to go wrong, and it is useless to be unhappy when they do so. If the problem can be fixed, we don't need to be sad. And if the problem cannot be fixed, being sad cannot help. It only rubs salt into the wound. We need to abandon aversion to problems because fear and anxiety only increase harm by sapping us of our courage. Aversion to things going wrong is the root of our anxiety. To overcome anxiety and to derive happiness from our problems, we should now cultivate the attitude of being happy when problems arise. Goody, goody, goody. So this is where we can start saying, how interesting. and start with the little things. That's how we get strong. That's how we have resilience. Just like some of you, no doubt, pay money to go to the gym. You pay money to suffer. You pay money to put yourself through torture. Like, many people do this. I can't understand it. Why? Why? Because you're not going, oh no, I hate the gym. You're thinking of the benefits. You're thinking of the strength, of the benefit of health. And that gets you through the suffering. So it's the same with any problem. We think of, there is a benefit here that far outweighs the problem. So Venerable Gyatso brought up what the great Saint Shantideva said. And here's a little wonderful diagram. You know, if you could do something about the situation, why worry? If you cannot do anything, there's no point in worrying. As the other great saint said, don't worry, be happy. So this is why it's so profound, folks. And when we do worry, sometimes that's all you've got to hold on to is that little sentence. Just like when Rinpoche said to me, Miffi, don't worry. So when I was in the fits of anxiety, nervousness, fear, you know, what can you can't keep huge, big sentences in your mind, but what you can keep in your mind is Rinpoche said I shouldn't worry, so I'm not going to worry. That was it. That was the sole starting point that I could grab onto and hold onto. Rinpoche said I shouldn't worry, so I'm not going to worry. So I put it aside. At least stop that momentum. So somehow having Rinpoche's, you know, permission not to worry was great. His word holds more sway than my word, thank goodness. And then after that, after holding that life raft, don't worry, be happy, then we can start working on the nuances of it. And the only incentive is if we see there's a benefit to it. So the benefit is that we need stress to be strong. We need stress training. So before I go on to how to break the habit of worry, any other questions, comments, confusions? What do we have from people? Okay, something in the chat here from Oren. I keep worrying because I imagine that it will protect me from the bad thing happening, or so that I'll not be surprised when the bad thing happens. That's right. So that's where worry can help us. And like that's my experience too, Oren. And in fact, I kind of think of it as like, in a way, it's like, that's why I've been cursed with being a good organizer, because I worry, and my worry sees all the little details that can go wrong. And it's just clear as day to me, and other people don't seem to see those things. So what I've done so that it's useful, I mean, it's great for Lungri Tumpa Center. I'm an awesome event organizer. I get stressed, but it's a smooth event. And people come along and they don't even notice. It's just like sail in, sail out, everything's great. Exactly the same thing happened when we had to go online. You know, COVID hit. Is the center going to close, or are we going to go online? I'd never even been online before. And here I was having to choose the program, having to learn how to host things, how to choose the ticketing, how to get it hooked up to the website, what Zoom etiquette was, whether we were going to use Zoom or some other thing, how to work the controls, remember the time of the class and lead the class all at the same time that the internet was going out. All of this was so intense. The amount of details, it just about killed me, but it meant that Lungri Tumpa Center didn't miss one single class from going in person to online. And nobody even noticed that I was riven with nerves. The that I had no idea what I was terrified. Nobody even noticed. I think people might have noticed because I didn't let anyone ask any questions. I said, just put them in the chat because I don't know how to use the other things because I was just too terrified. So, you know, bit by bit, it was really beneficial for Lung Retumpa Centre. 2 years later, I've kind of calmed down. The first year, I would say 12 months. It took 12 months to recover. But I've gone through enough stressful things now, and being a starving artist, you know, helped give me some backbone before I came to Lung Retumpa Centre, that even in that year of complete stress and terror, I knew it wasn't going to kill me. It ruined my health. I completely lost my fitness. And my adrenal glands was shot to pieces, and it was like a year of exhaustion afterwards. And now I'm coming up out of those 2 years. But you know, we can do that, and the benefit, it's worth it, absolutely worth it. So I just knew, are we going to lose my mother's entire life work and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's vision or not? Like I'm the only one around here who can hold it for this moment, so I'm going to do it. It's worth it. So our worry can be incredibly useful, and if you have a detailed mind like that can see those things, that is brilliant. It's not going to be pleasant for you, but it's going to be incredibly helpful. So my workaround is that I give myself time, and when there's no time, then I just stay awake. I'd rather lose sleep and be completely sleep deprived and having given myself the space and the time to just go through each of those things. So I do an enormous amount of work behind the scenes and just splashing about in it here and there and figuring this out and that out. And I go and read every single review. You know, I search Google, I do an enormous amount of research so that when the time comes, I can relax and be confident. It's just the only way to go. So somewhere along the line, as we go through, we've got to adjust. And my adjustment was to give myself hours more time than anybody else. So even now, you know, when it's time to start a class, I'm here an hour early, actually an hour and a half early. So I get things set up. So if the internet goes down, I've got plan B and I've got plan C. And I've got different devices there ready to go. I've got my notes printed out so that they're not on the, you know, I've got all of these things because I've had to use them all at some stage. And so then I can relax. Oh, okay. So Oren and then Courtney. So Oren, what's your question?
Okay. I'm baffled by this attitude about worrying because I feel like I did not expect your response. I don't want to. I know what you're saying. You don't want to worry because it's awful. But can you think about what's the benefit? What's the worry for? I think I worry obsessively and unnecessarily.
So that's those 4 misconceptions. So we worry, are we going to die? That's a crazy worry because yes, we are. The answer is yes. So now stop worrying.
But there's a lot of other things I worry about all the time. And people always think Orion is always worried about something. So
yes, and that's the momentum. That's just habit. And we think it's the things that we're worrying about. It's not. That is the habit of worry. So that's like a powerful river, a momentum. So you, Oren, have to direct your worry to something where it's going to work for you. So I directed my worry to all of the minutiae of hosting classes online. And I was probably nobody else could have done it in the time frame. So it was worth it. But that momentum, if I'm not careful, it can run away to worrying about useless things, and then it's debilitating. So once you have this momentum of worry, Oren, you've got to focus it onto something where those details are necessary. They help others.
I mean, sometimes it's been productive worrying, but That's maybe 25% of the time. The rest of the time is
Yeah.
is divided up into minute, ridiculous.
That's right. And so that 75% of the time will suck you of energy. So you'll find yourself tired, insomniac, and then it leads to depression, of course. So the 75% of the time where it's not useful, you've got to either go to Shanti Deva. Can I do something about it? Okay, then don't worry. Can I do nothing about it? What's the point of worrying? So you have that mental discipline. And then you go deeper to, are you laboring under one of those 4 misconceptions? And that will help turn that momentum of the worry.
Thank you.
Courtney, what was your question?
Hi, I don't know if this will make sense, but the things have a real findable essence illusion that we aren't like our body kind of thing. Is that where Buddhist psychology and Western psychology kind of clash? Because like Western psychology really says that we are our body and, you know, really like is really so connected to our body affecting our psychology and like our identity and that kind of thing.
We could think that, but Western psychology isn't a unified field. So some areas of our Western tradition, yes, are very materialistic, either to do with completely identifying with our body. So we get the whole plastic surgery industry, for instance, coming out. We've got our pop culture of we are what we look like. So we have all of the filters and things on Snapchat and blah, 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 to try and present an image of ourselves as if that's us. And there's a huge billion-dollar industry built around that. But there's also sections of our Western psychology, like, for instance, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And a lot of the can't say cures, but the methods to deal with post-traumatic stress, funnily enough, used by the army, are have a real understanding that we can mold our experience, that we can rewire our brain. Just like our brain has been rewired from stress, we can rewire it back. So that whole side of things, positive psychology, cognitive behavior, the neuroplasticity, but that's quite a relatively new area of our Western psychology and still quite radical to a whole other section. So it just depends where you land there. And there are a lot of vested interests. So we've got to really do our research with that.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps.
I think so. I was a bit confused at my own question, but anyway.
No, I get your question, and it takes a lot of unraveling because there's a lot in our materialistic culture that exacerbates that, and our obsession with appearances over substance.
Yeah.
So again, you know, we worry so much about how we look, and we think that the answer to that is to work on how we look.
Yeah, definitely.
But actually, you know, you look at influencers and their whole life is dominated by that. And all that's happening is that they're getting older and that time will end.
Yeah,
Whereas
so just
actually,
constantly fighting that.
yeah, that's right. So of course, there's going to be constant anxiety there all the time. So the answer isn't, if we worry how we look, the answer isn't to work on our looks. Just like if we're full of anxiety, the answer isn't to get rid of the anxiety. The answer is to look within and go, well, okay, if we actually do something that matters, we are going to feel like we matter.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so breaking the habit of worry, how to listen to our worry. So our anxiety, it is our friend if we learn how to listen. So I've put the hand here because one of it is to say, stop worry, just halt. Don't run away with me here. And then the other is to listen. What's the wisdom in there? So number one, what do? we've got to be mindful when the worry, the anxiety is arising. And how do we do that? We notice and name. So, here comes a wave of anxiety. How fascinating. Here comes some adrenaline. How am I feeling it? Where is it in my body? What's been the trigger? Notice and name it for what it is. Instead of going, oh no, what's going to happen? Notice that it's a physiological response and anchor it in your body. Notice your feeling tone. Name it. The moment we can do that, we're not 100% overwhelmed anymore. Now we have a watcher, like an inner reporter, and the experience. So what's so debilitating about anxiety is because it's usually 100% of us. We are completely overwhelmed. We can't even name it. The moment we can notice and name it, we have some power. What else? Change your breathing. So at the very, very least, make sure that your out breath is longer than your in breath. So this is a body hack. You know, our body, our physiology changes how we feel. And equally, if we turn our mind to it, we can change our physiology, then we'll change how we feel. So with the breathing, always breathe out longer, in shorter. And this even works for if you're an insomniac. You change your breathing to a state of going to sleep breathing, which is breathing out longer and breathing in shorter. For a state of anxiety, breathe out for 4, breathe in for 1, maybe 2 if necessary. That has a huge change. And then if you actually develop into a breathing meditation practice, like the 9-round breathing, or watching the breath, the 4 parts of the breath, the breathing in, the pause, the breathing out, and the pause. So hugely powerful. Sounds boring, but really, really powerful. Change your environment. So when we're stricken with worry, to actually change, go and stand in another room, go and look at a view, go for a walk, but change where you physically are. Walking is better than sitting having coffee and getting more and more frozen to the spot. Change the seat where you are. Go, even if you are frozen in spot, go and sit in a different seat. So that just it's like it helps to reboot us. We're embodied beings, so we have to kind of use our body to help us. Often when we become really worried, we become quite disassociated. We are not aware when we're bumping into things or we crash into things. So changing the environment, and especially going for a walk or sitting in a different chair or going to lie down, you know, helps to break the momentum. And it's often it's the least thing that we want to do. Physical exercise, walking. So they say physical exercise, of course, is wonderful for getting the stuckness of anxiety, you know, that frozen feeling. Luckily, it doesn't have to be, you know, like jogging or anything, just simple walking or gardening or kneading bread. Any of those things will also work just as well. Phew. Cut out dietary extremes. Too much coffee, too much sugar, too much alcohol, all of those things, they're just deadly. If we already have a propensity towards anxiety and worry, and then we have dietary extremes, it's just like stacking the odds against us. So we've got to be kind to ourselves. Mimic a posture of well-being. So this is a really good one. So one of them is, you know, when we're tight and anxious, we collapse, our fists go like this. My thumbs, how many times do I notice myself sitting there with my thumbs like this? I go, oh, gee, I'm so tense. So you just mimic being relaxed. So you open your hands and put them on your knees like this, open. You sit as if you're relaxed. Pretend you're relaxed. You know, sit back a little bit. And one of the best neurological hacks is you get a pencil or do I have a pencil here or something a bit better? A pen, this will do. You put it in your mouth like this. Just sit like this. Now, you might think that you're just being silly, but actually this is a profound neurological hack, because if you've got a pencil now, just stick it in your mouth and just feel the difference. So just like this. So what happens when you have a pencil in your mouth like this, it forces the corners of your lips up. And neurologically, what happens when you do that, when you force the corners of your lips up, it sends a message to your brain that you're smiling. And when that happens, then your brain thinks you're happy. This is a biohack, folks, and it is so good. So the moment that you feel this depression or anxiety washing over you, just grab that pencil and stick it in your mouth, okay? And then just keep on talking or doing whatever for a good, couple of minutes. Who doesn't like an easy way to do something? It's so incredibly powerful. What else do we have? Do it for others. Okay, so this is the one that, okay, once the anxiety has its momentum, once it's already manifest, once the adrenaline's already there, we can't undo the adrenaline. It's already coursing through our body. So once that's happened, we have to go with the momentum and use it, because if we don't, it becomes debilitating. So how do we use it? We just give up on feeling any good, and we think, well, if I'm gonna go through this, I'm gonna make it worthwhile. I'm going to do it for others. I'm going to do it for my people. If I'm nervous and shy, I'm going to hold the shyness of everyone in the room. I'll be shy for everybody. I'll take it off them. Then they can relax. I'll have it. Thanks. If I'm going to be nervous, okay, doesn't matter. At least it's going to help me focus. It doesn't matter if I'm miserable. That'll pass. We all know that. Impermanence, yay. What's important here? You people. I'm going to do it for you. So if we, the things that people do to save their family members, to save their country, they overcome all fears when we do it for others. So this is like an emotional hack. It's so powerful. So we just have to find the purpose. And that way we use the momentum. And it's like with martial arts, you use the momentum. You don't fight against it. What else? Reframe your anxiety as anticipation. Instead of, oh no, I'm so worried, it's like, whoa, this is going to be great. How can I prepare? Why is it going to be great? Because it's going to benefit others. There's just a few little steps here and the whole thing transforms. But I think we really have to spell it out for ourselves. Reframing it as anticipation means using your words, actually saying it differently to yourself. Write a list with an action for each item. So this is especially for you insomniacs that lie awake at night catastrophizing. Turn the light on. Give up on having any sleep. It's okay. Sleep will come later on. And write a list. Everything that you're worried about down one side. Write it down. Capture it with words. Once you put it on the paper, it'll be manageable for starters, especially those deep-seated dreads. Write them all down. And then on the other column, one thing you can do for each thing. So that's in your homework. There's always something that we can do. And so what's debilitating about anxiety or worry is how it makes us stuck, not that there's a problem. And so just like Greta Thunberg, one of my absolute heroes, you know, but before she started, you know, Friday's climate change, whatever it's called, School for Climate, she was at home, like for, I don't know, up of a year, completely catatonic at home, unable to do anything, unable to talk, unable to eat, collapsed over the enormity and the dread. And then this voice, her inner wisdom, said, there's something I can do, even if it's just me with a sign on the steps of Parliament. There's something I can do, something. One little thing, that's all it takes. And she did it for others. So it's right in there. This is a universal thing that we can do. It's not dependent on belief. It's actually how things work, and it's how we get real change. And the main big one, stop seeking satisfaction from external conditions. Oh, so that's, you know, Courtney, that's the thing that all the time we just can't help it. We go to the externals. We've got to change that direction and look first within ourselves, not the external conditions. It might be the first thing that we think of, but then we've got to notice, changing that external thing isn't the main point. We can change those external things, but not first, and it's not the main point. So here is a little something from this great book, Buddhism for Dummies. I love this book, not least that it's full of cartoons and good stories. It's really easy to read, but it's good, authentic Buddhism. So the Buddha's intention was to help people wake up from their denial. By mentioning suffering and dissatisfaction so prominently, he wasn't trying to bum anyone out. Instead, he knew that when you squarely face the truth of your suffering, an extraordinary thing can happen. You can cut right through it. As a number of contemporary teachers have pointed out, even though pain is inevitable in life, suffering itself is entirely optional. Although you may not be able to choose what happens to you, you can definitely take control of your response. And this makes all the difference in the world. So the Buddha's bold declaration was that there is indeed an end to suffering. What a relief. We're not just talking about a brief vacation from the cycle of dissatisfaction, but a complete cessation. Buddha was confident in this declaration because he had experienced this liberation and saw clearly that nothing prevents anyone else from doing the same. The solution lies in uprooting desirous attachment from your heart and mind. The simple way of putting this is let go. Let go of unrealistic expectations. Let go of harmful behavior. Let go of your clinging attitude toward people, possessions, and even your own body. And let go, finally, of yourself. Buddha taught that removing all ignorantly produced attachment from your mind in this way is like damming a river at its source. The flow of unwanted suffering will dry up by itself. Oh, so we've gone over, but I have one last little example I wanted to share with you. A story of how to find the wisdom in your anxiety. So for those of you who can see this picture, I don't know, does anyone have a fear of flying? We haven't really been able to fly for the last couple of years, but I know many people have a fear of flying. And this is the most perfect example for us, because the fear of flying isn't to get rid of the fear of flying. That's not what we're supposed to do with our anxiety. Don't try and get rid of the anxiety by going, oh, don't be scared, you know, don't be silly. we have a fear of flying, for instance, and we think that fear is bad. But actually, what's the hidden message in that sensation? So instead of trying to just get rid of the anxiety, which just pushes it down, doesn't it? It doesn't solve it. We can sit with the fear and ask some questions. So, what is the fear of anxiety showing me? It might be showing how unpredictable life is, how our human life is quite fragile. The body is fragile. It may also be an anticipation. How exciting to be flying. When we start recognizing that our life could end, what it shows us, why are we worried? Because our life is important. So our anxiety shows us how important our life is. If it wasn't, we wouldn't worry. Life is cheap, but it's not. We worry. Why? Because our life matters. So when we sit with the fear and we ask the questions, what's our fear saying? Oh, I might die. Well, it's not saying you might die in the plane. It's saying, actually, I am going to die and I don't know when. And it's the plane that is reminding us, thank you, plane. Thank you, fear of flying, because this is actually a state of affairs the whole time that we're oblivious to. And it's just when we're thinking about getting in a plane that it comes to the surface. So if we didn't have that fear of flying, we'd never even know that we have this question. What's left to do in my life that is undone? So the fear, it doesn't come from, it's not that we're going to try and grasp at permanence. Oh, there, you're not going to die. Actually, it's like, what do we have to acknowledge here? Yes, the fragility of life, and that it matters, and that we want to do something with our life. So statistically, we're actually much more likely to die in a car accident than flying. Flying is one of the safest activities in the entire world. The amount of resources that goes towards all the little minutiae in an aeroplane. But that's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because it's an unusual thing for us to do, then it brings to the fore what's already there. So anxiety shows, if we have anxiety, it shows we have regrets. We're not ready to die. There are still things we have to do. That's what our anxiety is showing us. And it's better that we know this. It's better that we know this now while we're still alive than on our deathbed looking back in regret. So this is why anxiety is our friend, because the anxiety comes up and we know I'm not ready. There are things left undone. There are people I need to call and say sorry to. And we just forget about that stuff until we're faced with our own fragility, and then it all comes up. But we miss it, don't we? We miss the trick because we go, oh, la, 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 I don't want to worry. And we push it all down again and we waste our life. So, there's a saying that no one says on their deathbed, oh, I wish I had have gone to work more. No, it's always, I wish I had to spend more time with family. I wish I had have lived a life true to myself and not tried to just fulfill everybody else's expectations, be somebody that I wasn't. That's the regrets that people have. So how do we know we're going to have those regrets or not unless we have some anxiety arise, unless it meets us in the face? So our fearlessness then, it comes from, not from being fearless, but really acknowledging our fragility, acknowledging impermanence, acknowledging our fear, and taking it for what it is. Yes, our life is limited. So what are we going to do with it while we have it? That's actually where our courage comes. So, you know, it's not, oh, you know, there's nothing to worry about, you'll be fine. It's whatever happens, know that you're worth it. Know that you're loved. Know that you're important. Your life matters, whatever happens. So very few times do we come to that just from having good experiences, do we? It's really when we're faced with our mortality that happens. So in summary, embrace our fear of flying. It reminds us what's what. Anxiety mostly is a habit. It's a momentum. And it is, unfortunately, it becomes our day-to-day practice, doesn't it? Instead of practicing meditation, mindfulness, equanimity, all of those things, we practice our worry over and over and over. It's our most familiar go-to thing, isn't it? Things go wrong, we go, oh no. So but what's driving that habit are our afflictive emotions, and in particular attachment, wanting to be things in a way that they're not, wanting things to last forever, wanting the happiness to come from the things. All of that, that's that mind of attachment, laboring under the 4 misconceptions. So instead of fighting it, what can it reveal? What's the kernel of wisdom here? How can it help us? If we have anxiety, it shows we are not living a life true to ourselves. We're living out of step with our own reality. There's things undone, unsaid, unresolved, and they are playing at us deep underneath. And we only know that when we're faced with COVID, with natural disasters. That's when what matters to us comes to the fore. So we need to do some preparation so that when those disasters happen, we aren't completely overwhelmed. In the downtime, we need to do some preparation when we're feeling safe to look at these issues. And what I found very heartening is that if we do have suffering, if we do have anxiety, that's evidence of our wisdom trying to burst forth. Just like, you know, with a fever, that's evidence of our immune system kicking in. Our body's actually working for us. So all the adrenaline and the worry and everything like that, that's evidence that our wisdom, it's trying to bring our attention to something. And it's going to keep coming until we do look at that something. So in a way, our wisdom, it's not going to let us alone until we have a look. It's really, really trying to burst forth. And we can have a look. We've got our innate human intelligence, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says. So the homework, there's the reflection sheets, there's the meditation on impermanence to get used to impermanence. The TV homework, one of the most inspiring ones is any of those shows, 24 Hours in Emergency. You know, I'm so inspired by them because people are in their life and death situations, and what automatically comes to the fore is innate human kindness. What becomes apparent is, despite everything, what really matters, we love each other. And it's not based on dogma, belief, religion, nothing. It's just there in all of its glorious messiness. So any of those shows, they're confronting, but they're really heartwarming. Then there's a couple of other ones. I love the air traffic investigations because they show that it's never just one thing. There's a whole lot of things combined of the circumstances.
Let's get started. Go.
And next week, we're going to look at how to stay calm in difficult situations. So this is mostly to do with antidotes to anger and frustration, but how to develop patience, how to develop a mind at ease. So thank you so much, everyone, for sticking it out. Sorry I've gone over, but I got a bit enthusiastic. Clearly my adrenaline didn't focus me enough today. All the very, very best. Let's dedicate that we can harness the power of our anxiety and that it can propel us all the way to liberation and enlightenment, and we can take everyone along with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Sunny. Thank you, Abelardo. Thank you,
Miffi,
Oren.
thank you for giving us so much. You're very generous. That you should apologize for going over is a riot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for encouragement. Thank you so much.
Unless somebody had a hot date or something that they had.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're off the clock. That's fine. Go for it, Abelardo.
Thank you. I read that you're giving a course coming up on Tantra. Can you? Yeah,
I am.
Yeah, it's in the Shanti Deva coming up yesterday. It's not open for registration yet. Can you give a little bit of an idea what it's going to be about? I mean,
I'm not sure what one you're talking about at the moment, because I'm leading like 3 overseas classes at the moment, and I get mixed up as to which centre. So I'm not sure at the moment. I'm leading something in the Zurich Centre on demystifying Tibetan Buddhist ritual. And that will go a little bit into Tantra, but I wasn't aware that I'm leading anything on Tantra, but it is one of my most exciting topics ever. So that'd be great.
You are, Miffi. You're teaching a course on Tantra. I'm trying to check the dates.
Starts April 22nd.
Right, starting April 22nd.
Oh,
Here
we are. New York City, 1 of 8. I didn't know what it was on. What's it on?
Tantra, Intro to Tantra.
Oh, holy moly. Fantastic.
You can start worrying.
No, I'm excited.
well, I want you to know I've taken several tantric initiations, Kala Chakra amongst them, but I need to know what do I do with it now? I went the opposite order. I had the
Many
fortune
of us have.
starting with
Yep.
the Tantra, and now I'm in Lam Rim.
Yes. Many of us have had that trajectory. We've dived straight in the deep end, and also because Lamzo Rinpoche plummets us into the deep end right there, because he sees we are already in the deep end and there's not a moment to lose. And so then we've got to kind of cycle back again and get the underpinning foundation. So that's why it's called Introduction to Tantra, because actually it'll fill in a lot of gaps. Me too, Abelardo. I was brought up a Buddhist, and I had an initiation when I was 16. That was my first one. So, then I had to kind of cycle back, just like you, to the foundations of the Lam Rim. So hopefully what we can do with this Introduction to Tantra is fill in some of those gaps, and also not be embarrassed about it, because it is haphazard. How we meet the Dharma is haphazard, and we just get it however we can, and then we've got to stabilize it. So hopefully it'd be great if you could come along. And then for the newer people, it's like how to make an informed decision. What is this all about? And hopefully to be able to dispel some myths and some misconceptions as well. Anyway, I'm very excited about it because I've done a huge amount of preparation for this class. I've led about 4 or 5 times now, and I've got really nice slides and mind maps and summaries and the whole works. So you're going to be a barrage of information. And I'll just do my best, because my thing, I'm just like trying to be a bridge between modern society, and then the Buddhist wisdom. So I'm just the bridge to just run over, and then you've got all of the Dharma there for you.
Well, you're such a great teacher, so I will be there and I'll be pestering you with all my questions.
Fantastic. Great. I love a curly question, Abelardo. And Oren.
You know, Miffi, when you speaking of Tantra, in the antidotes that you gave us at the end there, well, particularly when you said the one mimic an attitude of well-being, I was thinking, there it is right there. You know, that's a lot of the practice. So how nice. We've already started without calling it that.
Yes. So I used to, I mean, I kind of missed a trick there for a moment, because I used to pretend that I was my best friend Pearlie, who's really extroverted. So I'd pretend to be her, and then I wouldn't be shy. But actually, I should have been pretending to be Tara, but I forgot.
Tested positive, although not every Republican is here. Marco Rubio, the Republican senator from Florida.
Whoops.
Oh,
in that
someone's
time.
having a chat. Okay. So, and doing Tara Puja too. Excellent. So this is great, because I did have the dates in my diary, but I hadn't written down what it was. So I promise I'll be prepared, everybody.
And Miffi, I may be asking to speak to you at another time to see what I could take with you, because I'm a real beginner. Sheila was trying to give me some information about what's being offered at Shanti Deva, but this is really a beginning for me, and I don't know how much the language anyway, because it's very practical. But
So you're just going to dive in and get a grasp of whatever the terminology, the phrases, the language. You get used to it, but there's a particular point for that, because it is actually retraining our mind to have this very particular angle on things. And the best way to get that angle on things is with words. So it's really worth persevering with the terminology and getting quite discriminatory, quite specific with it, because it helps direct our mind so well.
is there something next that I should be a next step for me?
I think just show up each week. As long as you're doing something each week, it's okay.
In what course? What course?
Doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's the immersion to each week do something and get your mind thinking, and just work on a little bit here and a little bit there. So whether it's something like this, whether it's coming to Introduction to Tantra, which is a brilliant beginner's course, because it goes from where we are now through the Lam Rim to Tantra. So it's a nice trajectory. You know, you've just got to actually make sure that minimum once a week you show up, and that you do the homework so it integrates, and you come and do some pujas or meditations or something where you get a group experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night.
All
Now
right.
we have to go and listen to our president now.
Oh, good luck. Oh,
Yeah. Thank you.
long Len. Thanks, everyone. See you
Thanks
next
so
week.
much,
Thank you,
Miffi.
Miffi, so
Good
well.
night.
Thank you, Miffi.